Hello everyone! Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Noelle and I am super excited today because I am going to be ranking none other than the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher. So if you know me, you know that I'm obsessed with literally anything that Lauren Asher writes, in particular the fine print. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It is such a comfort read for me. I'm obsessed with it. It makes me feel like I'm in Disney. So if I'm ever sad, I just pick that book up and read it. So needless to say, when I found out about the Dirty Air series, I was so excited. If you know me, you also know that I am obsessed with Formula One, and these books are about Formula One drivers. So I was literally so excited. How many times am I going to say literally in this video? I impulsively bought tickets to the US Grand Prix down in Austin, Texas, like 2 days ago. So we're not going to talk about that because my bank account is hurting right now. But I'm really happy that I am going to get to see the action up close and in person. I'm super excited for this season. I'm obsessed with Ferrari. I love Carlos and Charles. We'll get to that later though. Let's get into my ranking of the Dirty Air series. Okay, so starting off with my lowest ranked book of the series, but still starting off strong nonetheless, is Throttled. So this book follows Noah Slade and Maya Altore. Noah Slade is basically like F1 royalty. He is the most dominant driver on the grid. Everyone respects him. He's just an amazing driver. Picture Lewis Hamilton type. Maya's older brother Santi is Noah's biggest rival in F1. Santi cost Noah a world championship one year and caused Noah to wreck. Noah basically hates Santiago for that, and ever since that accident and him losing the world championship because of that, Noah has had it out for Santi. Maya decides to travel with Santiago and his team, Bandini, and Noah just so happens to be a Bandini driver as well. The reason Maya's traveling with them is because she is starting a YouTube channel and she's going to become a vlogger. She thinks that if she travels with her brother, she would get a lot of good footage. So that's basically why she's traveling with them. Once she arrives, she kind of catches Noah's attention. Noah catches her attention. There is mutual attraction. They keep running into each other, and at first Maya actually really doesn't like Noah just because she's very protective of her brother. She loves her brother. So she's like, this guy is an asshole and he doesn't like my brother, therefore I don't like him. Eventually that changes and they have to hide their attraction and relationship from Santiago because it would cause a media shitstorm since their rivalry is so public, as well as the fact that it would deeply upset Santiago. So I don't blame them, but yeah, that was basically the whole plot. Don't you guys get me wrong, and before anyone comes at me, let me just explain why I rated this the lowest, because I know there are so many people out here who are going to be mad at me for my opinion. I love Noah and Maya, and I love the forbidden love trope just as much as the next one, and believe me, that trope hits different. But I just felt like there wasn't really much to the plot other than the fact that it was forbidden love. Like, I literally just felt like that was the whole plot, and I felt like the character depth was a little bit lacking. But I still love Noah and Maya, don't get me wrong. But anyways, that's all I have to say about that book. Still loved it nonetheless. You should read it. Amazing. So coming in third with a beautiful cover, might I add, is Wrecked. It is actually also the third book in the series. This follows Jax Kingston and Elena Gonzalez. So by the time you get to this book, you actually already know who they are if you do decide to read the series in order. Jax is introduced in the other books because he races for McCoy, which just so happens to be Bandini's biggest rival team. And in the second book, you meet Liam. He's Liam's teammate. And then Elena Gonzalez, you also meet in Collided, book number 2, because she also worked for Liam in the past. So this book was enemies to lovers, and I rated it a 3.5 out of 5. And again, before anyone comes at me, please let me explain. So part of the reason why I feel like I didn't enjoy this book as much as everyone else is because it took me quite a bit of time to read. I felt really uncomfortable reading certain parts of it. Yes, I knew the trigger warnings going in, but you know, I'm obsessed with the series, so I had to do it. But yeah, the series hit a little too close to home, knowing someone who I love, who I'm very close to, who has a terminal illness. So in that regard, I had to put it down multiple times because it just made me really emotional. So, but it was still great nonetheless, and I think the fact that it made me so emotional speaks volumes about the book. And unlike the first book, this book had just so much emotional depth, character development, character growth to it. This book made me cry. It was so good. But I rated it a 3.5 just because I felt disconnected because I kept stopping in the middle of it. To talk a little bit about the plot of this book, as I said previously, this book follows Jax and Elena. Jax is really struggling with something in his personal life right now. Believe me, it is rough. And it has caused him to sort of spiral and has caused him to abuse pills and alcohol. So trigger warning. Elena gets hired to help Jax and kind of clean up his image because believe me, it is not good at the moment. He is quite the problem for his PR team. Basically, he's just in a media shitstorm all the time because he is really having issues in his personal life. He's having trouble coping with those issues and feelings that are coming from those issues. So he keeps turning to pills and alcohol as a coping mechanism, and he just spirals. The reason they're enemies to lovers is because Jax doesn't want to change. He's set in his ways. He does not want to change the way he copes. He is fine with losing control and spiraling, but Elena wants better for him, and it's literally her job to help him out of that and to clean his image. So they really butt heads at first. Jax really hates the fact that he likes Elena. She's very happy-go-lucky in his eyes, even though that's not actually true. She actually has a lot of trauma as well. It's a pretty extensive job because of how bad Jax has gotten. She has to follow him literally all the time and basically live with him. Eventually, they do start developing feelings. I know, shocker. It's very forced proximity since it is such an extensive job. She has to be with him all the time to make sure he is not doing anything that would alert PR or ruin McCoy's image and his image. So basically, they are around each other all the time. She spends a whole summer with him at his family's house and sees the most intimate parts of him and who he is. She finally understands why he's struggling so much, and she helps him through that. He helps her through her past trauma. It's really sweet, and it's a masterpiece, okay? It's very hard for me to rate a book a 4 or a 5, so since I felt disconnected, I just felt like I couldn't do that. But if you like forced proximity, if you like enemies to lovers, anything like that, emotional bonding, trauma bonding, that book is for you. Again, trigger warnings. This book, trigger warnings to the max. Make sure you look them up before you read it. I ignored them because I'm obsessed with the series and I just had to keep reading it, but it was a little rough to get through in certain parts. I don't typically cry when I read books, and this book made me cry. So you have been warned. Okay, I'm a little nervous. Are you guys ready for this? Because once I show you guys what book I'm holding in my hand right now, you're going to know what book I ranked number 1 in the whole series. But coming in a strong second was Collided. This is the second book in the series. It follows Liam Xander and Sophie Mitchell, who you actually are already introduced to in Throttled, the first book in the series. Liam drives for McCoy, which is Bandini's biggest rival team, and then Sophie Mitchell is Bandini's team principal's daughter. To preface this book, Sophie and Liam actually already knew each other. This book begins with a flashback where they meet at a party a couple years in the past, but nothing comes of it, even though they kind of have a moment, because Liam realizes who Sophie is and is like, oh shit, I don't want to get involved. And then Sophie, once she realizes, she kind of thinks the same thing. Also, Liam's like, ooh, Sophie's too young, because at that point, I don't even think she was in college yet. So basically, fast forward to present day, when Sophie is really struggling, she's having a hard time at school, she decides to kind of reset and recalibrate, find herself, and try and be happier. She's like, what better opportunity than to travel with my dad's F1 team? They travel all over. So she decides to spend her summer break traveling with Bandini, And basically they are within forced proximity at that point. They both recognize each other from that party that they were previously both at, where they interacted, and they're still attracted to each other. I'll just say that. So she's kind of always hanging around the drivers, and, you know, they're kind of group of friends. Therefore, Sophie and Liam are kind of now in this forced proximity situation, and they definitely both are attracted to each other. So you picking up what I'm putting down? Okay, so you know where this is going. They begin to become friends, and Liam has huge commitment issues. Sophie just wants to have a fun, carefree summer. So neither of them are interested in a relationship. Because they're always with each other, neither of them want to act on their attraction. So they're pretty much just really good friends. One night they are all at a bar, and Sophie just so happened to drop this list she created. Said list has a ton of different items she's compiled that she wants to complete this summer. Like I said before, she's having a terrible time at school, and she's pretty much having like a quarter life crisis. She's like, I haven't really done much with my life. I'm really unhappy. I want to live. And it's kind of like a bucket list for her summer of sorts. But it has some pretty interesting items. It has kind of your typical like skydiving, hot air balloon, that kind of thing. But it also has some other items on it, if you know what I'm saying. Needless to say, he's pretty intrigued by this list, right? He, you know, so generously decides to take it upon himself to help Sophie complete this list. Well, we have a little bit of resistance, because at that point they're really good friends and she doesn't want to ruin their friendship, so she's having none of that. Liam's pretty persistent with him offering to help her complete the list. The rest is history. You can kind of see where that goes from there. The rest of the book is kind of about them working through their issues with having a relationship and working through what it means to go from friends to a relationship and handling that with all the external forces that are kind of coming at them. This book is so wholesome, so cute. If you like Friends to Lovers, you definitely love it. Huge fan. I love Liam and Sophie. It was so lighthearted, it was so cute, so wholesome. Last, but certainly not least, is Redeemed. It is the fourth and final book in the series. It follows Santiago Altore, Maya's older brother, and Chloe Carter. If I could fill my room with a bunch of people just to have in the background applauding this book, I would totally do that, because this book was amazing and it deserves everything. I know that people are going to be like, okay, well, why didn't you rate it a 5 out of 5? For me to rate a book 5 out of 5, it has to be very unique, which, don't get me wrong, this is one of the most unique books I've ever read because it's about Formula One and it incorporates a disability, but it also has to be life-changing, and I have to think about it for like a month after. I know there's certain books I've rated 5 stars that aren't like that, but as I've read more books, my criteria and my standards have gone up. So that's why I didn't rate it 5 stars. But if I had read this a year ago, I'd probably give it 10 out of 5 because it was just that good. It was amazing. If you love fake dating or kind of enemies to lovers vibes, this book would be perfect for you. It was so good. And the storyline, like I said before, was so unique, so well thought out, and so wholesome. It's the perfect balance. It was literally the perfect balance. This book starts out when Chloe's roommate and best friend Brooke buys her a DNA kit so that she can finally find out who her dad is. She was in the foster care system for a large part of her life because her mom is a living nightmare. Just no. It's no surprise that it's always been a dream of hers to find out who her dad is and establish a relationship with him. So Brooke buys her that kit. She decides to finally do it, and she gets a match. So the match to Chloe's DNA is in Italy. And she's like, what? Italy? Why would my dad be in Italy? But nonetheless, she decides to travel to Italy to try and figure out who her dad is, and once she's there, hopefully develop a relationship with him. She travels all the way to Italy. She gets to this small little Italian village, and pretty much everyone knows who everyone is because it's so small. So she's able to kind of ask around and figure out who her dad is, where her dad lives. So she goes to his house one night. So turns out that her dad's next door neighbor is Santiago Altore. Well, Santiago at this point is just a very grumpy, reclusive, closed-off man. And I know that throughout the series you're not used to seeing him like that, but something pretty horrible happened to him during a race a couple years prior to this. So it changed the whole course of his life. It altered all his relationships, his ability to drive, and just he hates everything and everyone at this point because of that. He is just so down on himself. He's in a really bad mental place right now. He basically doesn't have any social interactions with anyone because he is embarrassed and kind of ashamed of himself because of what happened to him. So he's this huge grouch, and he lives next door to Chloe's dad. Once Chloe gets to her dad's house, she quickly realizes that he's hosting a party or like a gathering of some sort. She realizes that it would be extremely awkward and like not the time or place to introduce herself and drop that kind of a bombshell on someone. So she decides to really creepily like scale his wall and climb up his wall because she's really curious about him, but like that doesn't make this any less creepy. Basically, she decides to like watch what's going on from a wall, see if she can find her dad like amongst those people or figure out which one her dad would be. He finds her scaling the wall, and he thinks that Chloe's some cooped out news reporter. Santiago is literally threatening to report her to the authorities. She tries to explain, but she's just so like dumbfounded at the whole situation that she just can't get her words out. So she kicks him and runs. In the midst of all this, she drops her phone. Santiago picks it up and he holds on to it. Chloe is super bold. She decides to break into his house the next day when she thinks no one's home. She wakes up Maya, Santi's little sister, and then Santiago comes out and is like, what's going on? Who is this? And Chloe's like, hi, and you know, there's like the awkward tension. They know who each other are, but Maya's clueless. He decides to lie and say, oh, that's my girlfriend, because his whole family is really sad for him and basically take pity on him. They just want to see him happy, so he thinks that this is the solution to that. Basically, that starts this whole fake dating ordeal. So Chloe keeps getting invited to all these family gatherings. Eventually, they begin to like each other. She helps him overcome his fear. He helps her realize who she is and her value and that she can be loved. It's just so wholesome. The trauma bonding, the emotions these characters feel, you feel like you're there with them. It was just such a good book. If you like grumpy sunshine, kind of enemies to lovers, or fake dating especially, you would love this book. So this was my official ranking of the Dirty Air series from least liked to most liked. I overall really enjoy this series and I highly recommend it to anyone who likes F1 or any of the tropes that I mentioned when talking about the books. If you love F1 like I do, leave a comment down below and let me know who your favorite driver or drivers are. Let me know what team you're rooting for to win the constructors and who you want to win the world championship this year. I am obsessed with Ferrari and I want Charles Leclerc to win, so let me know what your thoughts are on that. If you like this video, don't forget to leave it a like and subscribe to my channel to see more content, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye!